On this week's prequel episode, we follow up on our Barbie and the Nutcracker listener polls, learn about Tom Hanks, and preview Forrest Gump. Hello and welcome back to another episode of This Film is Lit. It's a prequel episode. We've got a lot to talk about, so we're going to get right into our patron shoutouts.
I put up with you because your father and mother were our finest patrons, that's why.
No new patrons this week, but we do have our Academy Award winners, and they are Nathan B., Vic Hammer, Matilde, Steve from Arizona, Paul, Jeff Niederhofer, Teresa Schwartz, Ian from Wine Country, Winchester's Forever, Kelly Napier, Gray Hightower, Gratch, Just Gratch, Shelby says, oh right, the feedback for TFIL, the feedback written specifically for TFIL, TFIL's feedback. That Darn Skag, V. Frank, and Alina Starkov. Thank you all very much for continuing to support us. We truly appreciate it. Speaking of feedback, let's see what the people had to say about Barbie in the Nutcracker.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right, well, on Patreon, we had 3 votes for the book, 0 for the movie, and 1 listener who couldn't decide. We also only had comments on Patreon this time, yeah.
Oh, okay.
First comment was from Shelby says, oh right, the feedback for TFIL, the feedback written specifically for TFIL, TFIL's feedback.
I can't do a Patrick Warburton.
I can't either, so I'm not even going to try. Shelby said, I enjoyed the fantasy elements of the book way more than I expected to, but I wasn't as charmed by the story within a story as Katie. By the time we were through the Nutcracker and the First World Problems, I was over it. I didn't dislike watching the movie, and I'm going to credit that to the voice cast. Also liked that the main character was aged up to make it a little less weird. Good Bad or Bad Bad covered a version of the Nutcracker a few years ago where the brother was also the Rat King. Is that what you were thinking of, Brian?
I imagine it is, because he's not the only person.
Yeah, somebody else commented that.
Somebody else, and I guess my brain didn't register at the time that that's what it was, but yes, I would imagine that's what I was thinking of. And the episode, the movie is Christmas Dreams, where it's like a weird version of the Nutcracker.
Yeah,
I think I even referenced that episode in. Did I not make it? No, I referenced it in a Good, Bad, or Bad Bad episode we did recently. Never mind.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, I do think that's what I was thinking of. What is the Nutcracker and the First World Problems a reference to? Like, what is?
I believe Shelby is referencing that, like within the story within the story, where the princess is transformed into like a Nutcracker monster thing. So the problem that they're trying to solve is that she's ugly, basically. Okay. And then the young boy also gets turned into a Nutcracker. So the problem then is also that he's ugly, essentially. Which, yeah,
okay.
I mean,
I see.
It's not like the worst problem you could have.
Right.
But it is a pretty common theme in folklore to, transformation into some kind of monstrous form or animal form. Our next comment was from Kelly Napier, who said, oh, the book, over and over. I really enjoyed the story, and it actually gave a lot of clarity to the stagings of the ballet I've seen. I have a hard time understanding story told through dance, but now I think I might actually be able to follow it. I found myself asking why the main character's name was changed from Marie to Clara at some point. Not sure if you noticed it or not, but there is a Clara in the book. She's a doll that Marie owns. Maybe someone thought it was just easier to combine the characters. That was kind of what I thought.
And just kind of like a playful reference because Clara is a doll and it's Barbie. So maybe
I mean, Clara is usually what the character is called in the ballet as well.
Wait, what? She said it was changed from Marie. No, I know. Yeah. But I'm saying in the book. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So yes, because they're doing what the play. Sorry. Yeah. So you're saying that not only does this change it, but that and I remember you saying this on the episode that the stage adaptations normally name her Clara.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not entirely sure where the flip came
Like why
about,
they did
but
it,
or
yeah.
why that was a decision that was made. Maybe somebody along the way just liked the name Clara better. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly also said the instrument used in Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy is a celesta. I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. It looks like an upright piano, but has that distinct tinkling tone to it.
Yes, I do vaguely remember that from my elementary school music classes.
And I think I said Celestina, so I
said something
I
like
was
that,
in the neighborhood at least.
Yeah, because I think there is. I thought that what you said sounded familiar.
There's
to me.
probably another instrument called a Celestina. It's probably a small celesta or something
Celesta
like that.
Is a transposing. Yeah, it looks like a piano, but it's not, obviously.
The only other thing I know of off the top of my head that uses that is Every Day by Buddy Holly. Our next comment was from Steve from Arizona, who said, seeing how weird the world is when it comes to the classics and reinterpreting them, oftentimes it's just better to indulge in the book. I will say it would have been a fun crossover to have Katie watch Christmas Dreams and see her experience the wonder of a Kevin Sorbo narrated fever dream with Holocaust references and Stephen King-esque horror imagery. Also, I was literally yelling Christmas Dreams when you started talking about the main character manifesting her brother as the Rat King.
Yes. So Katie hasn't obviously seen Christmas Dreams, but she has watched the episode.
I did watch that episode, so
yeah,
I have in fact seen the Holocaust references.
Yes.
For no apparent reason.
So the Celestina in 17... this is an article on Britannica. Okay. Encyclopedia Britannica, the website, I guess. In 1772, a device called a Celestina was patented by Adam Walker in London. It employed a continuous horsehair ribbon kept in motion by a treadle to rub the strings of a harpsichord. Thomas Jefferson, who ordered a harpsichord equipped with the Celestina in 1786, commented that it was suitable for use in slow movements and as accompaniment to the voice. Similar devices using rosin rollers were applied to pianos by various ingenious inventors throughout the 19th century.
So also an instrument.
Yeah, apparently, but like a very lesser known one, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
I wonder if my brain knew that, or if I
Seems
was just
unlikely,
grasping for something close.
When I googled Celestina instrument, the only thing that comes up is that article on Britannica. The second result is Celesta. Although Google is useless now, so who knows? Like, most search engines are just being ruined. But we've made the internet, anyways. Made the internet worse, anyway. But yeah, I don't. It would surprise me if you had known that, but maybe, I don't know. It's not impossible.
Not saying I did, but I'm not saying I didn't.
Yeah.
And our last comment was from Mathilde, who said, growing up with a German mom means my bedtime stories were all effed up tales, and it was completely normal to me. Maybe it shaped me in a weird way, but I like it, and rereading them as an adult, I can appreciate their creativity even more. The mix of strangeness, even horror at times, like Marie nearly bleeding to death, and sweeter moments should not work, but it does. Maybe because of the familiarity it brings up for me, or maybe because it's just great on its own. I love Marie/Clara. She's a very empathetic and kind protagonist. I love the idea of Drosselmeyer, what I would have given to have a family friend making me intricate toys and indulging my dreams and ideas. I love the weird shenanigans with the mice, the terrifying idea of a 7-headed mouse, the twist of the Princess Perlipat being a superficial bitch. It's all fun to me, even more now than it was when I was a child. The Barbie movie is fine, I guess, but nothing special or memorable to me. It does an adequate job of adapting the ballet, and the animation is fine for the era and the budget, but overall it's too ordinary. Tim Curry's voice work is the only point that I really liked, but that's to be expected. I'm not the target audience for it, and I didn't watch the Barbie movies as a kid either, so it had no chance of being my pick in this face-off. German inappropriate kid folktale for the win.
There you go. Our resident German has weighed in.
So like I said, we didn't have comments anywhere else. We did have some votes. On Facebook, we had 2 votes for the book, 0 for the movie. On Twitter, we had 2 votes for the book, 0 for the movie, and 1 listener who couldn't decide. On Instagram, we had 5 votes for the book and 4 for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Our listener polls winner this week was the book, with 12 votes to the movie's 4, plus 2 voters who couldn't decide.
There you go. The book crushes this week. It's time now to learn a little bit about Tom Hanks.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
So obviously we've covered Tom Hanks movies before, but at least
Have
one.
we?
Polar Express.
Oh, yeah, he was.
I guess that's
in-
the only one, maybe.
Yeah.
But yes, we did cover Polar Express.
We did. I forgot that was his whole thing.
I'm sure we either had a different learning thing segment or no learning.
I
thing
think we
segment.
talked about stop motion, maybe, or
Well,
not.
that
stop
film's not stop motion, so I wouldn't.
What am I thinking of? Motion capture.
Oh, probably, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe, yeah.
Anyway, Tom Hanks, figured why not? Let's learn a little bit about
Sure.
him. We're kind of getting to a point with the learning things segment where I'm grasping at straws sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes
But
we just don't do them. But
Let's learn about Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is an American actor and filmmaker and one of the most popular and recognizable film stars worldwide. He is the 4th highest grossing actor in North America, according to a list compiled in 2020 that I looked at.
Mhm.
And he's behind Andy Serkis, Robert Downey Jr., and Samuel L. Jackson.
Is that highest grossing like their movies are highest grossing?
Yes.
Interesting.
Like their body of work
Yeah.
altogether.
I guess.
And the 3 in front of him obviously have Marvel and
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings and
Is Andy Serkis in? I mean, he's in not Black Panther. Yeah, right.
yeah,
Black
he was
Panther?
in Black Panther.
But that's the only one he was in though, because he got killed off in that, I think. And then
I
obviously
think
Lord of
so,
the Rings.
yeah.
But
Lord of
Planet
the
of the
Rings
Apes
and
movies.
Planet of the Apes.
That's right. He was in
And
all the
also
Planet of the
all
Apes
the
movies.
Hobbit movies
Yeah,
too.
yeah. I forgot he was in all the Planet of the Apes movies and all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking like, yeah, that's right. Because a lot of times you don't see him in the
Right.
movie.
Very true.
Yeah.
But back to Tom Hanks. He was born in Concord, California in July of 1956. According to Wikipedia, he was shy and not particularly popular when he was a kid, but that did not stop him from acting in school plays,
Okay.
as it did not stop any of us theater kids.
Yes.
He eventually did go on to study theater at Chabot College before transferring to California State University.
Mhm.
However, he did end up dropping out of college following an internship at the Great Lakes Theater Festival in Cleveland that turned into more of like a full-time job.
I wonder what full-time job that could have been.
It sounded like it was a little bit of everything. Like he
Okay.
was just doing whatever they would let him do there.
Interesting. Okay.
And ended up like dropping out of school because he was getting experience in the field.
Right.
Also during that time, he won the Cleveland Critics Circle Award for Best Actor for his 1978 performance as Proteus, or Proteus, I'm not really actually sure, in Shakespeare's The Two Gentlemen of Verona. It's been a hot minute since I read any Shakespeare. Anyway, he moved to New York City in 1979 and continued to pursue acting both on stage and on film. And his film debut was in the low-budget slasher film He Knows You're Alone in 1980. I didn't know he ever like pursued any stage work. I thought that was interesting because a
That
lot of
doesn't
actors
surprise me.
do.
I'd
But
say most of them have at some point.
I did not know that. Of course, Tom Hanks was already like huge by the time I was born.
Oh yeah,
so
it was obviously had blown up.
Yeah.
When we were
like
born.
he was already Tom Hanks by
Yeah.
the time I knew of him. But his big break in Hollywood was actually getting cast as the lead in 1984's
Mm-hmm.
Splash. And he got that role after meeting the film's writers while making a guest appearance on the TV show Happy Days.
Also, isn't Splash directed by Ron Howard? I think.
Maybe, I
Which
don't
would
know.
make sense.
I've
I
never
thought-
actually seen Splash.
Yeah, it's directed by Ron Howard, so that would
So
be
he met everyone.
He met, yeah.
So that was his big break, but it was the broad success of the fantasy comedy Big
Mhm.
in 1988 that established him as a major Hollywood talent, both as a box office draw and within the industry as an actor. And he got his first nomination for an Academy Award for Best Actor for that movie.
For Big,
yeah. That success, though, was followed by a string of box office underperformers.
Yeah.
But he climbed back up to the top again with his role in A League of Their Own in 1992. And then the rest of the 90s was just like a long list of huge successes for Tom Hanks, with some of his most well-known films coming out during that decade, including Sleepless in Seattle, Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, Toy Story, Saving Private Ryan, You've Got Mail, and The Green Mile.
Yeah.
He won the Academy Award for Best Leading Actor for Philadelphia in 1993, and then again for Forrest Gump in 1994, becoming the second actor in the history of the awards to win consecutive Best Actor Oscars. So Hanks kicked off the 2000s by starring in Castaway, another one of his most well-known roles, for which he received a Golden Globe Award and an Academy Award nomination. He then also began to dip his toes into other aspects of film, including directing and producing collaborations on Band of Brothers, Road to Perdition, and Catch Me If You Can. And he and his wife, Rita Wilson, also produced the hit movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding in 2002.
I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
I knew he was involved in Band of Brothers, but I didn't...
Yeah, he had like a... It just said that he collaborated in a directing and producing
Yeah, I'm trying to see
role.
if he directed.
Like, it didn't say, like, co-directed or anything. It just said collaborated.
He directed one episode.
Yeah.
So, or at least according to IMDb, he directed one episode, is what it says. So, that would make sense.
Yeah. Also in 2002, he became the youngest ever recipient of the American Film Institute's Lifetime Achievement Award at the age of 45.
Yeah, wow.
So I mean, I feel like you really have to have a good body of work to get a Lifetime Achievement Award at 45. Good on you, sir. So at this point, I was getting a little bored of just tracing his career through the decades.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're close enough to the present that I'm just gonna hit y'all with some additional Tom Hanks fun facts.
Sounds good. I think people know the films of Tom Hanks at this point.
Yeah.
Most people.
So Tom Hanks is often compared to James Stewart and also has frequently been referred to as America's dad. And he does have a dad vibe.
Yes,
to
for
me.
sure.
Big dad vibes. He also has an asteroid named after him. Asteroid 12818 Tom Hanks. All one word.
Yeah.
He's a distant relative of both Abraham Lincoln and Fred Rogers, a.k.a. Mr. Rogers, who he also portrayed on screen.
I wonder how distant.
Pretty distant,
Yeah,
I think, but like on the family tree.
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
He serves on the board of governors for the nonprofit educational space advocacy organization, the National Space Society, and is a huge advocate of space education and study. He was inducted as an honorary member of the United States Army Rangers Hall of Fame for his accurate portrayal of a captain in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Hanks is also known for his political work, including donating to many Democratic politicians, raising funds to campaign against Prop 8 in 2008, being a proponent of environmentalism and, in particular, electric vehicles, and endorsing both Obama and Biden in their respective presidential campaigns.
He's the one. I feel like he's not the one, but he's, you know, the right likes to talk about the liberal Hollywood, and I mean Tom Hanks is a classic liberal, but it's funny that I don't think any conservatives hate Tom Hanks. Despite
I'm sure there are people that don't like him, but like, I don't know. He just seems like an okay guy.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
Another little anecdote, I thought this was interesting. In 2004, while he was touring the White House, Hanks learned that the press corps did not have a coffee pot. And shortly thereafter, he donated an espresso machine and then donated new machines in 2010 and 2017.
I find that incredibly hard to believe that the press corps did
keeping
not
the
have...
press corps in caffeine.
Okay.
Tom Hanks.
Interesting.
I don't know, man. This is according to Wikipedia.
Yep.
And aside from all of the accolades that I have already mentioned, Hanks has also received the Kennedy Center Honor in 2014, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the French Legion of Honor both in 2016, and the Golden Globe Cecil B. DeMille Award in 2020, which is
their lifetime.
It's another
achievement
lifetime
award.
achievement award.
Yep.
I don't know Tom Hanks. Maybe he's secretly an asshole, but like on paper, he seems like a pretty stand-up kind of guy.
Seems like it.
Seems like
there
it.
may be some dark secrets that none of us know, but I've never heard anything. I don't think about Tom Hanks. I could be wrong.
He just seems like generally affable.
Yep.
And like talented and stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Good for him. All right. Let's go ahead now and talk about one of his most famous movies. Well, sorry, the book that one of his most famous movies is based on, Forrest Gump by Winston Groom.
Hello, my name's Forrest Gump. Would you like a chocolate?
Oh, thank you.
It's funny what a young man recollects.
You're the same as everybody else. You are no different.
Your boy's different.
Are you stupid or something? Mama says stupid as stupid does. I'm Jenny. I'm Forrest Gump.
She was my most special friend. My only friend. We was together all the time. We was like peas and carrots, Jenny and I.
Run, Forrest!
Hey, stupid! Run!
Now, you wouldn't believe it if I told you, but I can run like the wind blows.
Who in the hell is that?
That there's Forrest Gump, Coach. Just a local idiot. I never thought it would take me anywhere.
Forrest Gump is a 1986 novel by American author Winston Groom. The titular character's surname was actually taken from Gump's Store, a thing that I've never heard of, but according to Wikipedia, it is a luxury American home furnishings and home decor retailer that was founded in 1861. Literally, I've never heard of it.
Me neither.
But apparently that's where the last name came from.
Interesting.
A sequel to Forrest Gump, titled Gump and Co., was published in 1995 following the success of the film. The novel suggests that the real-life events surrounding the film have affected the character Forrest's life within the world of the book. With Forrest telling readers on the first page, quote, "Don't ever let nobody make a movie out of your life story." And, quote, "Whether they get it right or wrong, it don't matter." Which I think is an interesting approach.
Huh. So just to the reason you haven't heard of Gump's is that it's not like a chain. It is specifically, which we could have visited it, which if we would have thought about it, it's a like a store specifically in San Francisco. It is like a high-end home furnishings. And like, like their website, I'm just on their website, and there's like jewelry and weird little baubles and trinkets, and
I do feel like I saw something about that when I was like looking at stuff to do in San Francisco, but I thought it was like a novelty like movie tie-in thing.
No, they have just like, it's really kind of weird, like they have like bar decor. They just have all kinds of like, it's kind of like look like a Crate and Barrel, except like maybe not as like practical focused. Like, because Crate and Barrel has like a lot of
like kitchen tools,
but
and
it's
things.
Similarly, maybe kind of, I don't know.
Or like a Pier 1.
Yeah, kind of. Again, here's some of their categories: trinkets, trays, and boxes, faux florals, table decor, collectibles, chocolate, tea, and more, pillows and throws, desk and stationery. There is serveware and drinkware, but there's not like, games and puzzles, lighting. So it's like that kind of stuff.
I love all that stuff.
But it's just called Gump's, and it's a store in San Francisco.
Interesting. Well, now we know.
Assuming that's the same one, yeah. Which it seems like it.
The novel Forrest Gump was actually not like super well received. In a 1986 review by Kirkus, the anonymous reviewer described the book as a, quote, stumbling, droopy-drawed attempt at a picaresque novel, and said that it was a, quote, heavy-handed, one-joke sort of novel, which is finally a cheat. So Kirkus, not a fan.
Yeah.
Publishers Weekly recognized the, quote, on-target humor, but said that the author, quote, has written better books than this.
Okay. I mean, that's I'd be like, fair enough. Like, it's, you know, it's a backhanded compliment in a way.
So it initially only sold around 30,000 copies, which is a lot, but not like a lot, if you know what I mean.
No, yeah, it doesn't seem like a ton.
Yeah. But after the film was released, the novel sold over 1 million copies.
Yeah.
So, and aside from the 1994 film that we will be discussing, there was actually an Indian Hindi language adaptation of the novel released in 2022. Although that film's Wikipedia page says that it's a remake of the Tom Hanks movie.
So it may not
so
be,
who knows how similar it even is to the book.
Yeah, it may be more of a film remake than a book adaptation. Okay, cool. Well, speaking of the adaptation, it's now time to learn a little bit about Forrest Gump, the film.
Now, maybe it's just me, but college was very confusing times.
Have you ever been with a girl, Forrest?
I sit next to them in my home economics class all the time.
Have you given any thought to your future?
Go! What's your sole purpose in this army? To do whatever you tell me, drill sergeant? You're a damn genius. You are going to be a general someday, Gump. Yes, drill sergeant!
They sending me to Vietnam.
Listen, you promised me something, okay? If you're ever in trouble, don't try to be brave. You just run, okay?
Okay.
Forrest Gump is a 1994 film directed by Robert Zemeckis, known for Back to the Future, Contact, Castaway, The Polar Express, the 2020 version of The Witches, among many others. It was written by Eric Roth, who actually wrote Dune, the 2021 version, Killers of the Flower Moon, most recently, A Star is Born, and another one we've done, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. So fair amount of adaptations in there. And the film stars Tom Hanks, and it's also interesting to me because some of those movies, I don't know, it's interesting. The politics of some of those movies don't mesh with what I've heard about. We'll get into it. This movie has a complicated, has had a complicated reassessment.
Maybe Eric Roth has just grown
That's
a
true.
word.
Yeah, that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, or 30 years ago. So yeah, very, very, very possible, very likely. Anyways, the film stars Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, Gary Sinise, Michael T. Williamson, Sally Field, and Haley Joel Osment. Those are all the main people, at least. And I assume the pronunciation for that Michael T. on the internet said Mickelty or McKelty, but then when I went to an interview with him, the interviewer said Michael T. and he didn't correct them, so I'm going with Michael T. But it's spelled Mykelti. The film has a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, an 82% on Metacritic, and an 8.8 out of 10 on IMDb. It is number 11 on IMDb's top movie list. The film won a bunch of awards, but just kind of limiting it to the Oscars here, it won 6 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Actor in a Leading Role, Best Director, Best Writing, Best Editing, and Best Visual Effects, and it was also nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Gary Sinise, Cinematography, Art Direction, Sound Effects, Makeup, and Original Score.
Wow.
So nominated for, what was that?
So a critical darling.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13 Oscars, I think, and then won 6 of them. Yes, critical darling. We'll get into the Oscars, some of the Oscar controversy here in a little bit. Not really controversy at the time, but we'll get into it. The film made $678 million against a budget of $55 million. So before the book was even published, there was significant interest in the script, or in the manuscript, and it actually resulted in a bidding war that was ultimately won by Warner Brothers Studio to the tune of $500,000. And at that point, Winston Groom would write 3 drafts of the script that were actually a closer adaptation of his novel in the early stages of pre-production for this. Then, apparently, Rain Man came out, and Warner Brothers decided they didn't want to make another Savant movie, which it's not the same thing, but they're basically, according to Wikipedia, they didn't want to make another Savant movie right after the Rain Man came out, and so the project kind of stalled. Then Eric Rother was brought on, or Roth, right? What did I say his
Yeah,
name
you
was?
had Roth earlier.
Yes, Eric Roth. Was then brought on to rewrite the script, and eventually Paramount Pictures bought it. And they actually bought it during the acquiring the rights for it. Paramount actually swapped a script rights. Basically, this is a thing I guess studios do, or used to do maybe, where they'll just like swap script rights. Like, oh, we want that movie, we'll give you this. Yeah, basically. And they gave Warner Brothers the script for Executive Decision, and they got Paramount got.
I've never even heard
Forrest
of that
Gump.
movie.
Yes, well, I mean, it's actually a pretty big movie. It has Halle Berry and like Kurt Russell. It's got a fairly, but yes, no, it made like no money. Worst trade Warner Brothers probably ever made. Maybe not the worst. I don't know. Maybe there's a worse one out there, but I'm sure they're kicking
that
themselves.
one seems pretty bad though.
Sure, they were kicking themselves for that one. So, getting into the production, a handful of other directors were actually considered for the film before Zemeckis was hired. Some of those directors include Ivan Reitman, who's probably most known for directing Ghostbusters, but lots of other comedies from that era. Penny Marshall, who's probably most known for A League of Their Own, and Big, directed Big. And then also she's Laverne, right? In Laverne and Shirley, or Shirley? She's one of the two. I'm pretty sure Penny Marshall is one of the two in Laverne and Shirley, right? Am I making that up? I'm pretty sure Penny Marshall is, yes, she's Laverne in Laverne and Shirley, was Laverne in Laverne and Shirley. I believe she passed away recently. Another actor or director that was considered was Terry Gilliam, who did Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Brazil, obviously a bunch of other movies. And then Barry Sonnenfeld, who's probably most known for The Addams Family, Men in Black, and Wild Wild West, among other things. But none of them were selected, and it ended up going to Zemeckis. I found an article from the BBC about famous roles that were turned down, and apparently John Travolta was the original choice to play Forrest Gump, and he actually very much regrets having turned down that role years later. Some other actors that were considered included Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, Matthew Broderick, and Sean Penn. And apparently Groom imagined the role being played by John Goodman when he was like writing it or whatever. Some other people that were considered for parts, Joe Pesci was considered for the part of Lieutenant Dan. And then according to the Chicago Sun-Times article that I found, David Alan Grier, Ice Cube, and Dave Chappelle were all offered the role of Bubba, which is what Michael T. Williams, I believe it was Williams, his role, but turned it down. And then in another interview that I found with Uprocks, Tupac's wife, his widow, said that Tupac Shakur had also read for the part of Bubba, apparently. Did not get it. The film was primarily shot in South Carolina, with the state standing in for Alabama, which is where most of the film takes place, but it travels around quite a bit, obviously, because Gump's a bit of a jet setter. Well, not around the world. Well, he goes to Vietnam, but famously, but... So I found some random stuff about VFX and stuff on the Wikipedia page. None of it was super interesting. It was all kind of like standard stuff. But one of the things that I thought was interesting is that for the shot of the Lincoln Memorial, which there's a scene where they go to the Lincoln Memorial for like a big, there's like it's I think it's MLK's I Have a Dream protest, like the big one. And the way they filmed that was they actually had 1,500 extras, and they moved them around the memorial, like the National Mall, and recorded them all, and then composited it all together to make it look like tens or hundreds of thousands of people at the mall. And it was really only 1,500 people. All right, getting into some IMDb trivia, so take it with a grain of salt. The actor who plays a reporter on the scene where Tom Hanks visits Washington, D.C. after his return from Vietnam was apparently also an actual tourist from Atlanta, Georgia. He happened to be on Capitol Hill that day with his wife, and he was asked to read, supposedly. This is getting to the controversy about the Academy Awards that I mentioned. In 2015, The Hollywood Reporter polled a bunch of Academy members about any potential redos they would want or revotes they would have for old awards that had been handed out. And one of the more popular mentions was that the 1994 Best Picture winner that should have been given to the Shawshank Redemption instead of Forrest Gump, according to a lot of members of the Academy, which was a fairly popular take today, and like just been a fairly popular take since. People like Forrest Gump, but I mean, Shawshank Redemption is a better movie by like a lot, in my opinion. And I again, it's been a long time since I've watched Forrest Gump. I've never disliked the movie Forrest Gump. See how I feel about it now, but it's been. I probably watched it last in college, maybe. It's at least been 10 or 15 years since I saw it. The film was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the National Film Registry in 2011, as it is culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Apparently, Kurt Russell is the uncredited voice of Elvis in the movie. There's a couple. There's like a part or two where Elvis has some lines, or we hear him.
I believe that.
And yeah, apparently Kurt Russell did that because he was friends with Zemeckis or something, and he's had him do it. The magician Ricky Jay, who actually passed away not too long ago, designed a special wheelchair for Gary Sinise that used an illusion to hide his legs, because Gary Sinise is in a wheelchair for most of the film after he gets injured in the war. And apparently it had a hidden platform underneath to basically like a magic trick to hide his legs so that he could sit. But the contortion that it required to sit in it meant that he could only use it for like 10 minutes at a time. Otherwise it would get really uncomfortable. Also, the other thing I read is that they, most of the time, I don't know how much they actually used that chair. I'm sure they had it and used it maybe for some stuff. But a lot of it that I read is that they also just wrapped his legs in like blue cloth and then rotoscoped the legs out later, which is how they normally would do that. But if you could come up with a way to do it where maybe you didn't have to do that for certain types of, I could imagine it being useful for certain things. A lot of times there's usually not one way they do things like that in movies. There's usually multiple ways that they accomplish that depending on the scene and how it's being filmed and et cetera, et cetera. So apparently the studio imposed pretty significant budget cuts before they started filming, which forced Zemeckis to leave out quite a few planned effects shots that he had. One in particular I just had to mention because oh boy. One shot in particular that was cut involved Forrest running into Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his supporters. In the scene, Forrest Gump distracts several dogs trying to attack King and his supporters by playing fetch with them and rendering them harmless to King and himself as well as his supporters. Woo! So that's the kind of thing yes, your reaction there is, I think the reaction that a lot of people have to this movie in general is, I think there's quite a few scenes in this movie that you could, if you read a description like that, the scenes that actually make it into the movie, you would have similar reaction to just the descriptions of the scene. And then my last IMDb trivia fact was that apparently many of the extras in the scenes with the hippies, at one point, Robin Wright goes and she's hanging out with hippies, were actors from the Maryland Renaissance Festival because the casting director realized that they would be a good source of performers with long hair. So they got a bunch of Rennies to come be hippies in the movie.
Rennies, hippies.
I thought it was fun. Yeah. And then finally getting into some reviews, and these are all contemporaneous reviews because, as I mentioned, the film has sort of been critically reassessed as of late, less positively than it was at the time. But it wasn't uncriticized at the time. Todd McCarthy, writing for Variety, said, quote, "The film has been very well worked out on all levels and manages the difficult feat of being an intimate, even delicate tale played with an appealing light touch against an epic backdrop." End quote. Contrastingly, Anthony Lane, writing for The New Yorker, called the film, quote, "warm, wise, and wearisome as hell." End quote. For Entertainment Weekly, Owen Gleiberman said that the film was, quote, "glib, shallow, and monotonous," and, quote, "reduces the tumult of the last few decades to a virtual reality theme park, a baby boomer version of Disney's America." End quote. Yep. And that is, see, I think that's a contemporaneous review, I think. And that is more in line with more of the modern critical reassessments of the film that I have seen. So, writing for Rolling Stone, Peter Travers called Gump, quote, "everything we admire in the American character, honest, brave, and loyal with a heart of gold," end quote. The New York Times, Janet Maslin called Gump, quote, "a hollow man who is, quote, self-congratulatory in his blissful ignorance, warmly embraced as the embodiment of absolutely nothing," end quote. And then finally, because he was writing at the time, Roger Ebert for the Chicago Sun-Times said, quote, "I've never met anyone like Forrest Gump in a movie before, and for that matter, I've never seen a movie quite like Forrest Gump. Any attempt to describe him will risk making the movie seem more conventional than it is, but let me try. It's a comedy, I guess, or maybe a drama or a dream. The screenplay by Eric Roth has the complexity of modern fiction. The performance is a breathtaking balancing act between comedy and sadness, and a story rich in big laughs and quiet truths. What a magical movie." End quote. I think he gave it 4 out of 4 stars or 3.5 out of, I can't remember, but big fan Roger Ebert was at the time. So that's that. We want to remind you can do us a favor by heading over to patreon.com/GBRB. This film is lit. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get them. I've said the other way around. I don't think I've ever done it that way. Patreon.com/this film is lit. You can support us there and get access to bonus content. We just released our happiest season review for our December bonus episode. We do all that kind of every month. We put out a new bonus episode. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, or Threads, any of those places. Make sure you keep track of us so we can hear what you have to say about any of the movies we review. And again, as I mentioned, if you do support us on Patreon at the Academy Award $15 a month level, you get priority recommendations, which this movie was by.
This was a patron request from Kelly Napier.
There you go. One of our longest standing Academy Award winning patrons. Kelly, thank you for recommending it. I'm very excited to revisit this. Katie, where can people watch Forrest Gump?
Well, as always, you can check with your local library or a local video rental store if you still have one. Pretty good odds that they'll have this movie.
Yes.
Or you can stream it with a subscription to Paramount Plus or Pluto TV.
You could also probably find this one at your local thrift store.
Probably.
Like on DVD.
Or VHS.
Or VHS, yeah.
But barring any of that, you can rent it for around $4 from Amazon, Apple TV, YouTube, Vudu, Redbox, DirecTV, Flix Fling, and Spectrum Plus.
There you go. Those are all the places you can watch Forrest Gump. Like I said, I'm excited to revisit this. I'm trying to go in without preconceived notions. I haven't watched anybody's contemporaneous reviews. I just have seen people say, boy, this movie does not hold up. This movie is not. And other people are just saying like, oh, I never liked this movie. I don't know. So I'm interested to see because I've seen this movie a handful of times when I was younger. And again, the last time was probably sometime in college, if I had to guess. I don't remember watching it more recently than that. But the couple of times I remember seeing it when I was younger, I enjoyed it, but I was also a kid. So
Well, I've never seen it.
Yeah.
So I'm coming to this with zero nostalgia goggles.
That's going to be fascinating. I almost wish it was a Switch episode. I think it works either way, but it would be interesting to see you coming into the movie with no knowledge because I have seen the movie a few times, but I think it'll work either way. But yeah, I am interested to see what you think of the movie, having never seen it before.
Me too.
Yeah. I will have all of my questions will be line based. I'm fairly certain. All of my questions will be, is that line in the book? Is that like it's a very maybe one of the most quoted movies. American movies of all time. It's got to be up there in the top 10 of movies that people just say random lines from. So, anyways, that's going to do it for this prequel episode. Come back in 1 week's time. We're talking about Forrest Gump. Until that time, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
watching movies,
and keep being awesome.